Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this informational webinar on the Power of Passengers Challenge. My name is Jonathan Yakasha from TechConnect Ventures, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. Thanks for joining us. So, to begin with, let's talk about what we're going to be doing today. First off, we're going to do a quick introductions for our speakers, myself included. Then we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of this challenge. We'll spend a good chunk of time talking about your questions. So if you have questions, please feel free to submit them into the question box. We'll take care of them in the second half of today's broadcast. If we run out of time for your questions, don't worry, we'll include those questions and answers after the webinar. And then we'll wrap up with some next steps. So to begin with, my name is Jonathan Yakasha. Once again, I'm the Senior Program Manager for Challenges and Crowdsourcing with TechConnect Ventures. Also on your screen, you are seeing Andy Haskins, Division Director from Transportation Security Administration. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Glad to be here.
Great. And actually, Andy, we will start off with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the TSA and why you guys are interested in running this challenge?
Thanks, Jonathan. Absolutely, it's my pleasure. So TSA is probably well known to anybody who's traveled to an airport in the past few years. Probably not traveling a whole lot in the past 10 months, unfortunately, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. But we're actually an agency with a very big a footprint and a lot of different responsibilities. So not only are we at nearly 440 airports, federalized airports around the country, but we also have regulatory oversight for different aspects of transportation security in terms of the 4+ million miles of roads out there, railroad tracks, so light rail, freight rail, mass transit. Something that I recently learned, and I've worked here 18 years, is that there are 612,000 bridges that TSA surface transportation security inspectors help to secure and regulate the security of. There's 3,700 maritime terminals, and then there's the long truck, as it's called, or the 2.75 million miles of pipeline out there. TSA's mission is to protect the nation's transportation system, to ensure the freedom of movement for people and commerce, which is really obviously very important. And we try to do that with a vision that is as an agile security agency embodied by a professional workforce that engages its partners and the American people to outmatch a dynamic threat. All right, so that's kind of TSA in a nutshell. We're about 66,000 people all over the country and the world, actually, and very dedicated to our mission. Can we go to the next slide?
Sure.
And we're always trying to do things differently. Agile is the operative word from our vision, and the reason we're doing this challenge, the reason we're partnering with TechConnect is to identify ideas, approaches, and technologies that will make our security operations more effective. We want to be more efficient, and we don't want to ever forget the passenger experience. We want it to be a positive one. That's something that has been a part of our history since the beginning, and we're continuing to always try and improve on that. And that's the purpose of the Power of the Passengers Challenge. We don't think we have all the best ideas. We've got a lot of good ideas, but we know that the more we can tap into the smart folks out there around the country, the better. So next slide, Jonathan. You may have already seen this, I hope. If not, we've got 5 focus areas that we're particularly interested in for this challenge. Obviously, top of mind for everybody, I think. It's hard to not to be thinking about this, is COVID-19 recovery. Had a big impact on the travel and transportation sector, and we want to make sure that it's safe to travel and safe to fly, and we'd like any ideas you might have on that. Passenger arrivals, international arrival transfers, security screenings is a big one. That's one of our categories here. That could be on person, in property, so the stuff you bring to the checkpoint, your checked baggage, and then generally all around situational awareness. You cannot be too situationally aware. And again, we're not saying we have any issues with these 5 that we're trying to make up for, but we want to improve constantly. We think that's part of staying ahead of the dynamic threat that I mentioned, a few minutes ago. The adversary is out there, and we want to constantly be improving. So those are the 5 focus areas. And let's go to the next slide, if we could, Jonathan.
Sure.
And then a little bit more about why this challenge. TSA is making a big push right now. We have a chief innovation officer who I work for to be more innovative as an agency, and prize challenges, crowdsourcing good ideas is something that we're trying now. We want to engage you in a new way through a prize challenge. And we like to think that, like I said, we have good ideas, but we don't have all the good ideas. So that's where we could always use help. Sometimes detaching from the problem helps make the solution or a better solution easier to see. And to that end, we're looking for new approaches and technologies that you might help us see that maybe we missed, or maybe you just have more expertise in. And in general, just like you've seen throughout these prize challenge documents and messaging and whatnot, we want to be more effective, more efficient, and we want to have a better passenger experience for everyone that travels. I kind of blew through that because I want to make sure that we have time for your questions. I'll talk all 45 minutes, and Jonathan will understandably get upset at me, and then you won't get to have questions, so you'll be upset. So I'm going to just pause there, if that's okay, Jonathan,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
turn it back
absolutely.
over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andy. As Andy just mentioned, we imagine that you folks have questions about this challenge, about what may or may not be considered part of this challenge. Please feel free to avail yourself of that Q&A chat box. Submit your questions there. We will get to them in just a little bit. We're going to start working on some of the other challenge details here, some of the procedural information that you're all going to want to be aware of. So first off, the timeline. On your screen right there, you can see the full run of this particular challenge. Today is January 19th. It's Tuesday. It's a little after 11 in the morning Eastern time. Today is the informational webinar. The next really big date that you're all going to want to be aware of, not coincidentally, is the submission deadline. You have just a little over a week until January 28th, that's a Thursday, to submit your response to this challenge. You have until 8 p.m. Eastern time to get your submission in. Please don't wait till the last minute to work on your submission. I've seen it happen before where people start working on it and then something happens and they can't submit on time and they aren't considered part of a challenge. So avail yourself of the opportunity to get it done sooner rather than later. Next, judging from the TSA will take place basically through the month of February. And we are aiming to have winners announced in early March, round about Monday, March 8th. Speaking of evaluation, how will your responses be scored? A team from the TSA will go through and read all of the eligible submissions, and they'll be judged according to how effective they talk about their particular issue, the impact on operations, and how that proposed solution actually resolves the issue. So it's in your best interest to tell the best story possible. Tell TSA why you think this particular issue is important, what impact it has on either you or a particular community that travels, or another aspect of security operations. And then talk about how your approach will actually solve that problem. In your submission, you're going to need to include a 2-minute pitch video. How you present that pitch video is entirely up to you. If you want to just narrate a 2-minute slideshow presentation about your approach, great. If you want to have a 2-minute talking head video where you're talking to the camera about why this is important and why your approach will solve it, fantastic. For the full details of it, please avail yourself of the opportunity to take a look at the challenge page. The link is up there on the screen. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have already been to the challenge and maybe even have it bookmarked, so getting to it won't be a problem. Eligibility. Excuse me. This particular challenge is open to all citizens of the United States over the age of 18. So if you're a citizen of the United States, you are eligible to participate, whether you're an individual or you're a member of a corporation. Responses from teams also still welcome for this challenge. The one caveat is that the individual submitting the response has to meet that eligibility requirement of being a citizen of the United States. And I'll just say for legal reasons, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're actually eligible to participate, okay? Moving on. Submissions, really important. Right there at the bottom of the screen in big bold letters, January 28th, 2021, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's your submission deadline. In order to submit your response, you're going to want to go to the challenge page. You're going to see the submit button. When you go there, you can actually see all of the questions that you're going to need to answer in your response. There's a couple of checkbox questions to help categorize your response. There's a few open text questions that will give you the opportunity to, like I said before, tell the story of your issue, your solution, and the impact that it has. You also have the opportunity to include supplementary materials. So if you've got supporting documents, PDFs, white papers, research papers, what have you, you're going to be able to include that with your response. Has to be in English, and there's no cost with your submission. And that last bullet point there is very, very important. All entries must include only non-confidential information. That is to protect your intellectual property. Nobody can be accused of stealing your intellectual property if you haven't given any away. So talk about your approach in a non-confidential way. These next two screens are going to be really important and really interesting for everybody. Awards. So first off, the financial awards. There is a total prize pool of $215,000. There's a grand prize of $30,000 for the proposal that has the greatest impact on all three areas of interest. That's security effectiveness, operational efficiency, and passenger experience. So that one proposal that simultaneously impacts all three of those to the greatest degree, that's the one that's going to be the grand prize winner. There are also 3 prizes for each of those areas of interest as well. So security effectiveness has a first, second, and third place, and you can see the prize amounts associated with all of those. And there's also the opportunity for one special $5,000 prize for the most creative response. So in total, there are a number of different prizes that you are eligible to win as a result of this challenge. So there are lots of opportunities to win. In terms of non-monetary recognition, there are opportunities there as well. The TSA might consider the establishment of a vendor relationship. So if you've got a company and you're interested in doing business with the TSA, this may be a good way to get your technology in front of TSA eyes. They may be able to set up a vendor relationship with you. If you're a student and you are interested in security, maybe there's an opportunity for mentorship. The TSA can also consider connecting respondents with tech accelerators, developers, manufacturers. And that last one there is particularly interesting, I think, invitations to speak at TSA conferences or lectures. That's going to get you in front of broader security community so that you can talk about what you do and why you do it. And those are some of the non-monetary awards that TSA can consider. So we're going to go ahead and move on to questions. We've got a number of questions already that have come in as a result of you all registering for today's webinar. We also have some questions coming in via the question and answer box. Once again, I'd just like to say, you've got people on the line right now that can answer your questions in real time. So if you have a question or if you think that you might have a concern about the challenge, please feel free to submit your questions. This is a great opportunity for you to get your questions answered right now, well before the deadline, so that you can incorporate that information into your response. So with that, we're going to go ahead and switch over to the questions. And our first question, Andy, is a question for you. Are you only interested in solutions that expedite Part 121 operations? is better situational awareness for Part 135 in scope. Now, as I understand it, Part 121 versus 135 addresses different aspects of airline transportation security. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So the question is really, are we interested in anything done to secure a charter aircraft or on-demand scheduled aircraft? Yes. The answer is any and all. I think is of interest to us, especially in terms. Obviously, that's part of TSA's mission. We handle those two things a little differently, but if for the prize challenge, power of the passengers challenge, yes, we're interested in both.
Okay.
121 and 135, I'd say, are in scope.
Okay. Just for some of our audience attendees who may not be familiar with those particular distinctions, 121 versus 135, which one is 121 the charter or is that commercial? How do those two break up?
Oh no, you're putting me on the spot here, JJ.
Yes, I am.
Um, I will have to take a pass on which one is charter versus which one is just regular, commercial air carriers.
Okay.
But let's just go with we're asking about both, and we're
Okay.
interested in both.
Okay, fantastic. For the individual who submitted, obviously you are aware of the distinction between those two. I myself did a quick search this morning, not being familiar with it myself, and it looks like, and actually, thank you, Robert. 121 is scheduled air carrier, 135 is air taxi, so that would be that chartered air transportation. Thank you very much for that contribution, Robert. So. Our next question is the focus on the entire airport or just screening? And Andy, I think we'll stick with you for that one as well.
Sure, great, good question. The entire airport. We don't want to think, too small in terms of just what we're doing right now in terms of screening. So security is a big job, and it really, starts when you show up to the airport until you take off. So the entire airport. Please feel free to include those in your submissions.
Sure, and you when you travel, you tend to hear the recorded announcement, about TSA and not leaving bags unsecured. So it really does encompass the entire travel experience once you walk into that airport door, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. There's a lot going on beyond just the checkpoint, and we're interested in your thoughts on all of that.
Okay, great. All right, let's see. This question actually might be one for me. Can private citizens participate and give good suggestions to the TSA to improve efficiency? Short answer, yes, absolutely. Longer answer, the TSA is interested in any and all approaches that can make their security operations better. So if that particular idea comes from an individual citizen who says, I've traveled and I've noticed this particular issue, and this is how I would go about resolving it, yes, please feel free to submit your response. We want to hear from you. Likewise, if you work for an organization that is in an industry that can make a contribution to TSA's security operations, we still want to hear from you as a result of this challenge. So whether you are that individual who just has a really good idea and wants to share it with the TSA, or you are an organization and you want to materially improve TSA security operations, those differing paths are still equally of interest. Would you agree with that, Andy? Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing we love to say is that being able to travel safely is something that I think everybody can get behind. So we all want to have that outcome. Anybody that wants to help us and has a good idea, we're all ears.
Okay, fantastic. And looking over one of the questions that just came in, building off of this previous question, can foreigners attend this competition? And I think what the question there is, are they eligible to submit a response? Um, the short answer, unfortunately, is no. This particular challenge is open to citizens of the United States. Um, the one potential pathway wherein a non-US citizen could participate is if they were participating in a group, whether that's you and another individual or multiple individuals. In that particular circumstance, you would be eligible to participate so long as the individual submitting the response, the person whose name is immediately associated with that particular response, is the person submitting and is a US citizen. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that takes care of that question. Our next question, is TSA considering use of biometrics to reduce human contact and increase security of their operations? And I think, Andy, that would be a question best addressed by you.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. The answer is yes. I would point you to TSA's website, www.tsa.gov. On there, you can find our published biometrics roadmap that we recently put up that can give you more information on some of the things we're looking at now. So definitely interested in that, not only to reduce human contact, but to increase security. So yeah, thanks for the question. It's a good one, and I think that you might find that an interesting read.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Our next question comes from Ricky. Do you have to mention the non-monetary awards that you might see fit in the proposal? Not necessarily. If in the course of describing what your particular approach is and how you go about resolving it, it might become pretty clear what sort of non-monetary incentive you might be interested in. So if you reference the fact that you are a college student who is traveling cross country from home to your university and you came across that, well, then maybe that mentorship path is something that would be of interest to you. Once the TSA has evaluated all of the responses and considered who is going to be the winners for this particular challenge, at that point, then they can start to determine what potential non-monetary recognition would be most appropriate for that particular individual or respondent organization. And then potentially can start having those conversations to determine which would be the most effective and interesting pathway. Would that be a fair assessment, Andy?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of good questions. I really like these questions.
Yes, yeah, we've got good questions coming in. Let's see. Um, Jason asks, is there a resource to know more about which tech the TSA already has in place at airports, or what types of things are already being monitored, in addition to optical cameras, x-rays, body scans, facial recognition, that sort of thing? I think this will be a two-part answer here for you, Jason. First off, on the challenge page, you will see an FAQ tab. And there is in that FAQ question, list of questions rather, a series of links that may provide you some additional information about what the TSA is currently using. I'll also turn that over to Andy and see if he'd like to point anybody in an additional direction for further resources.
Yeah, I just add to that. If you go to the TSA website, you can find some additional information. Obviously, there are things that we can't disclose that we don't want
Sure.
to just put out there to the public. But I think between the frequently asked questions on the website as well as the TSA.gov, that would be a good start. And I'm
Okay.
not just saying I can't comment because it's cool, but I can't comment. Uh,
It just also happens to be cool.
it just happens to be cool. Yeah,
Yes.
right.
All right. Would the TSA be interested in the development of an ambient biosensor for specific biological risks? Andy, here, I think the question is getting towards whether or not the TSA would be interested in a sensor that could be keyed in for a particular biological risk, whether that's COVID or something else. My sense is that that would still fit within the scope of the challenge, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is obviously it's an ideation challenge, and so chem, bio, things like that. We would definitely be interested in hearing about that and what benefits you think that might make to the security effectiveness, efficiency, and passenger experience. Um, so definitely.
Okay, great. You touched on this a little bit ago. The individual is asking, what are the current problems with X-ray screenings that are driving the need for innovation? It's not really so much that there are specific issues with the scanning technology systems that are in place in airports or other TSA facilities that you're looking to address with this challenge. It's more what are the ideas and approaches that we aren't currently aware of that we could take advantage of for our operations? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to underscore that again, that we're not driven to this to doing a prize challenge, in particular this one, because there's an issue. Instead, we just want to be constantly pursuing improvement. And actually all three types of innovation, and we think that the initial step there is ideation. So um, yeah, no particular problem, just looking always to improve.
Okay. Let's see. We've got a question here that just came in. Would near real-time, non-contact core temperature screening be eligible for this challenge? My sense, Andy, is that that would be within scope of this challenge because it would be part of COVID recovery. It would be part of making things more efficient. That certainly sounds like it would be within scope for this challenge.
Yep, absolutely. COVID-19 is one of the focus areas for sure. I think that not having to be touched, especially in this day and age, is a big plus in the passenger experience, column. So uh, the answer is yes, definitely.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, just like to reiterate, if you've got questions, please feel free to submit them. If we run out of time to answer all of your questions during today's webinar, which could certainly happen, don't worry about it. We will include your questions and their associated answers on the challenge page following the webinar. So one way or another, whether it's part of today's webinar or after the fact, you will get the information that you're after. So submit your questions. We'll take them all and we'll get to as many of them as we can. With that in mind, we'll move to our next question. Is the challenge only about ideas on paper, or does TSA want to have some prototype developed? Okay, I'll take this one. The answer is both. The TSA is interested in those really good ideas from private citizens, individuals who see an issue in security operations and have an idea about how to go about solving them. So they want those ideas as well. Likewise, they're also interested in organizations that have a technology that can make a positive contribution to those security operations. So it's really dependent on where you fit within that spectrum. Are you that individual who travels a lot and sees an issue and wants to contribute? Fantastic. We want to hear from you. Are you an individual who travels a lot, but you also happen to work for an organization that could, like I said, contribute something technologically to TSA's operations? Fantastic. We still want to hear from you in this particular challenge. It's really where you fall on that spectrum. Okay. Let's see. Okay. We got a question that just came in, so bear with me. It's a little bit long. Will the administrators of the challenge be providing any tools to possibly facilitate teaming in furtherance of a submission? Unfortunately, no, not really. That's really going to be up to you to figure out who and what you need for building out your team. We're not going to be able to say that you need XYZ expertise and therefore, help you figure out which ones you're going to need right there for building your response. We do welcome teams, but assembling the team is going to be something that you're going to have to handle on your own. Our next question. Could both passengers and their family or associates who entered the airport be checked for COVID-19 for entering the facility? From an operational point of view, I think it would be fantastic if the TSA had access to some sort of COVID-19 diagnostic test that was virtually instantaneous, but I don't know that anything like that exists, but Andy, if somebody were to have a technology that could tell passengers or their associates, hey, you've got COVID-19, you can't enter the airport, I'm guessing that would be of interest. Yes.
Yeah, I think that would be we'd be interested in hearing about that. I mean, there's certainly a lot of those kinds of ideas going around, and attempts to do something like that, but it falls within the scope of the challenge for sure.
Okay. As I've reviewed some of these questions, I think the simplest way to address whether or not your particular technology is in scope for the challenge is to think about it in these particular terms. Uh, is my technology contributing to making security operations more effective, more efficient, or more positive for passengers? If the answer is yes to one or more of those, then you're probably going to be within scope for this particular challenge. Um, that is really the nitty gritty of what this challenge is looking for ideas and technologies, approaches that can make TSA's operations more efficient, more effective, and more positive for passengers. So if you can say yes to that, you can probably consider that your idea is going to be within scope. Okay.
AJ, can I add to that real quick, just
Yes,
on the
please. Absolutely.
COVID-19 topic? Just to
Yeah.
provide a little more clarity or maybe a reminder. What we're really interested in, not if for purposes of the challenge here, is kind of the post COVID-19, transportation environment, whatever you think that means, because we don't, who really knows right now. But so
Exactly.
that definitely could mean testing as a way, to get back to the level of transportation and travel, especially in terms of people that we saw a year ago. It doesn't mean that TSA isn't interested in things right now, and how to deal with COVID, but for purposes of this challenge and from the innovation office, in particular, we're looking toward, what comes next. So that doesn't mean that the COVID tests at the entrance to the airport does not fall within that part of the focus area. I just want to, kind of underscore that we're looking for post-COVID, whatever that means to you, recovery.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Andy. Okay. Let's see. Question about, can you elaborate on how to gauge security effectiveness? Andy, I'll turn this over to you in a minute, but I think that the best way to answer that question is going to be dependent on what it is that you're addressing. You know, if you can make security more effective because you can scan more baggage per minute, that's going to be obviously an efficiency impact, but it's also an effectiveness impact because you're able to scan more baggage within a given day. If you can scan to greater detail within a bag, that's going to be security effectiveness. So I think it really depends on what particular issue you're going to be addressing. Andy, would you agree with that, or is there anything else that you'd like to add to that on how to gauge security effectiveness?
I would definitely agree with that. I think that it certainly depends on what part of security we're talking about here. I won't reread the stuff we have on the website. That definitely provides some examples. But we're open to also thinking about effectiveness in terms of deterrence. It's definitely harder to measure for sure. But an attack that doesn't happen, is there's a form of security effectiveness associated with that, because if an adversary were, for example, just deterred, they looked at a potential target and said, I don't want to do that now. That's effective security. It's just different than we're used to thinking about. But for sure, it could mean lower false alarm rates. It could mean, when we're talking technology, better detection rates. And maybe better secondary screening effectiveness. If you think about it in terms of sequential order. Yeah, so not trying to be difficult, kind of trying to be toe the line between informative and vague there, so that we don't anchor anybody to a particular frame of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It may help our audience to think about building your response like telling a story. You want to tell the TSA why, what the particular issue is that you have identified. Why is it an issue? Who does it impact? What sort of impact does it have on TSA? What sort of impact does it have on that particular operation? And is that a security screening for passengers? Is it cargo screening? What sort of impact does it have? And then tell the TSA about what your approach is going to do to mitigate that particular issue. Tell them the story so that at the end, they're going to want to learn more about you and your approach. And say that, okay, this is a really good idea. They've really thought about it. So as Andy was saying, trying to not be too prescriptive as far as the how, what, when, where, and why of your response. Build your response based on what you see as the issue that you want to address, and then tell that narrative of the how, what, when, where, and why of your issue. With that one in mind, we've got another question here. If I've got several ideas to propose, should I submit one big response or multiple smaller ones? And then they also follow with, if I submit multiple responses, can I win multiple prizes? So the first part of your question, can you submit, should you submit one response or multiple responses? That's really up to you and how you see your ideas fitting together. If it makes more sense to submit one idea that addresses lots of topics all together and they interact synergistically, great, go ahead and submit that one big proposal that does that. If you think that it makes more sense to separate them out because maybe there isn't enough overlap to have one big proposal, fine, go ahead and submit more than one. That's great too. The follow-up question, are you eligible to win multiple prizes? Yeah, if you submit a bunch of different proposals and one of them is security effectiveness and one of them is for passenger experience, you could be recognized as the first place winner in security effectiveness and the third place winner in passenger experience or what have you. So it really depends, like I said before, about how you want to frame your particular issue and how you go about resolving it. Trying to not be too prescriptive there. We are coming up on, oh, big burst of questions here. We're coming up on the end of our time. I'll try to get through all of our questions here, like I said before. If we don't get through all of the questions, don't worry about it. We will address them following the webinar and you'll get those questions and answers. So one way or another, you'll be able to get the information that you're after. All right, our next question. Okay, let's see. Are there post-award deliverables and expectation? Okay. Let's see. Question that just came in is, are we allowed to use data in other research purpose? For the individual who submitted this question, if you would, please expand on what you're asking there. Not quite sure what you're asking. If you're asking whether or not you can include information from previous research in your response, the short answer is yes. You can include other research that you have done to support why your particular approach is a valid one and impactful for the TSA. If I'm not understanding the purpose of your question, please go ahead and submit an update. We'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, let's see. Next question. Are there post-award deliverables and expectations from the TSA? I think that would depend on the nature of the respondent, whether that's that individual who just has a really good idea versus the organization that is looking to partner with the TSA long term. And as far as what those post-challenge deliverables might be, it would depend on whether or not the TSA has made a determination and what sort of determination the TSA has made for that post-challenge collaboration. The deliverables might look a little bit different if it's hey, we can invite you to a security conference so that you can talk to other organizations that might be interested in your technology, versus we're going to establish a vendor relationship and proceed from there. It's really up to the TSA to determine what responses and respondents are most of interest for post-challenge collaboration, and then what sort of post-challenge collaboration is going to take place. Andy, did I describe that sufficiently well there?
Yeah, you did. Not knowing exactly what the what the future holds, I would say though that we're not just looking to take the winning submissions and walk away. If there's the potential for future collaboration, so we're definitely interested in continuing that, depending on the type of the idea and the other party's interest in doing so as well. What we're very interested as an agency, in working with non-traditional partners and bringing in new ideas. Innovation is a priority for the TSA administrator. So, to the extent that such a relationship would support any of that, we're definitely interested.
Okay. And I think our last question before we start to wrap everything up is going to be, and I think I know the answer to this one. Are you interested in a suite of available technologies for screening against viruses and keeping terminal air virus free, beyond individual screening? Andy?
Can you repeat the first part, JJ?
Sure,
Sorry.
absolutely. Are you interested in a suite of available technologies for screening against viruses and keeping the terminal air virus free beyond individual screening?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely interested in virus-free air in general. I think that falls under the one post COVID-19 or COVID-19 recovery focus area. So yeah, absolutely, that suite sounds interesting.
Yeah, and I think it would definitely fit into making the passenger experience a bit more positive if they could be reasonably secure in the idea that they're not going to be exposed to, viruses while they're sitting in the terminal.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you all for all of those questions. We're going to go ahead and start to wrap up now. We've got a few minutes left, so while I won't be addressing any further questions, if you've got questions prior to the end of the webinar, please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A chat box. We'll take those questions and we'll get you the answers that you're looking for. Right, and as you can see on your screen right there right now, there is the link to the FAQ. There is also the email address if you have a question outside of today's webinar. It's challenge@techconnectventures.com. So if you think of a question after the webinar, don't worry about it. We can get you the information that you're looking for. So your next steps, if you're interested in participating in this particular challenge, and we certainly hope that you are, make sure that you're eligible to participate and or win awards. Next, obviously, stay connected and stay informed. You can go to the challenge page and you can subscribe to updates. You can obviously also follow TechConnect Ventures on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn, contact information right there. Not to harp on it, but once again, the submission deadline, Thursday, January 28th, 2021 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure that you've got your submissions submitted well in advance of that time. We would hate for anybody to miss out on participating in this particular challenge. We want to hear from as many different people as possible. I think it would be fair to say that the TSA would be very much interested in having too many really good options to consider and having to wade through some really great technologies and ideas. So if you've got an idea or a technology that you think the TSA should consider, please consider responding to this particular challenge. In our final moment here, I will say thank you very much to our audience. You had some really great questions today. Hopefully we got you the information that you're after. If we didn't for whatever reason, please follow up with us afterwards and ask your questions again. We will get you the information that you're looking for. Thank you once again to Andy Haskins from the TSA. Thank you for joining us today. It was great talking to you, and I hope that you had a great time. And everybody, have a great day.
Thank you, JJ.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.